Welcome to Branding 101, 4 steps to building a business that attracts customers. My name is Jay Arrett. I am Dean of Marketing Know-How at themarketingspot.com. We are a marketing consulting firm based in Waco, Texas, and I help small businesses, entrepreneurs build a brand and build a marketing plan around that brand. Today's webinar will give you the basics of branding in 4 steps that you can kind of comprehend and use as building blocks to build your brand, because many people just have this difficulty of understanding exactly what a brand is, right? And that's the big question that everybody starts out by asking is like, hey, what is a brand? What is a brand? Well, a brand, by my definition, is, well, let's take a look at some brands to determine that, okay? What exactly is a brand? So you're going to see some logos here of some well-known brands, including that final one, which is a local restaurant here in Waco, Texas. It's Waco's Restaurant, and I'm doing air quotes around Waco's Restaurant because it's the most popular locally owned restaurant in Waco. So when people come to town, we don't take them to Chili's or to Applebee's or to the Roadhouse. We take them to George's because it's got a long history here in Waco. So what is a brand? Well, the definition, if you were looking for like a dictionary definition of it, this is mine. A brand is a psychological, emotional relationship between a business and customers. And so if you have a brand, people have thoughts about you, feelings about you, and opinions about your business. Marketer Marty Neumeier, who has written several good marketing and branding books, and this one called Zag, he says a brand is a customer's gut feeling about a product, service, or customer or company. So a brand is a relationship between a business and a customer. It's not your product, it's not your service. Those are just the intersection or the meeting point between you and the customer. A brand is really a relationship. It's not a transaction. And then I get the question, what is the value of a brand? Why should I go through all this word branding? Can I just sell stuff? Can I just have great quality products and good customer service? Well, I like to illustrate what the value of a brand is by going back to our local restaurant here, George's in Waco, Texas. And so this is a picture of George's at night, and their tagline is home of the Big O. And a Big O is a big old round glass of beer. It's a beer mug that looks sort of like a glass and sort of like a mug, and it's big and it's round, and it's called an O, the Big O. So George's has built their brand around the Big O, the big old glass of beer. And this is a picture of one of the 2 George's locations in the evening. So what is the value of a brand? Well, what I like to do is illustrate this by taking away, first of all the identifiers. Let's take away the logo, which a lot of people commonly think is a real brand. And let's take away those logo identifiers. And in fact, let's take away the styling on the George's name too, and let's just call it George's. After that, we should probably take away the tagline, home of the Big O, because if you say that in Waco, Texas, everybody knows, hey, the Big O is George's. And then, George's, the name itself, gives a connotation of some meaning. So let's just call it a restaurant that serves beer and chicken fried steak. So what is the value of a brand? It's the difference between a restaurant that serves beer and chicken fried steak and George's, home of the Big O, where owner Sammy Citrano promises you a big old beer drinking time. That is George's. Okay, so how do you get one of them their brands, right? How do you become a George's, which has probably the best known brand in Waco? Well, I'm going to go through 4 steps for you to kind of give you the building blocks so you can start to understand how to build your own brand. Remember, I said a brand is a relationship, so it's something that you cannot necessarily touch, but it doesn't mean there are not building blocks that you can touch and form to form this relationship with the customer. And it starts with the brand promise. Now, the brand promise, by definition, is what you promise to deliver to the customer beyond the product or service that you happen to sell. anybody can sell what you're selling. And unless you have some new invention that I don't know about yet, anybody can sell what you are selling or offer the service that you are offering. And they can probably do it at a lower price. In fact, some of you are probably already have that type of competition. So your brand promise is what you deliver beyond that product or service. It's what people get from you and their relationship with you. And what exactly is that? Well, this is where businesses like to often pull out what they think are the three big guns of marketing. You've heard them before, right? The first one is quality. The second one, price. And of course, the third one is what? You know it. Say it in your head. It's, of course, service. So if we offer quality, price, and service, that should be our promise, right? The problem is that's not a promise. That's an expectation. That's what customers already expect from you by doing business with you. So what you're saying, if you promise quality, price, and service, what you're saying is, I promise you your minimum expectation from me. That's my brand promise. And we know that we want something different than that. Let me illustrate this. So this is Corel, right? Here's what they promise you a lot. And this you can apply to your own businesses. It's chip resistant. It's microwave safe. Why Corel? Because it's dishwasher safe. And of course, it's stackable and lightweight. Now, is that the reason you should choose Corel? Can't somebody else offer that and already does? What might Corel promise besides something like that? And what might you promise besides quality, price, and service? Well, Corel just happens to promise some style to you. If you go to their website at Corel.com, they promise you style. Their tagline up there says, every style has its strength. We're not going to talk about that tagline right now, but we will get into taglines here in a little while. So how do you get a promise that resonates with people? Well, you have to know your customer. And more importantly than knowing your customers, you have to know their desires. Promises made to customers should be promises made to the customer's desire. What desires does your customer have? What desires can you fulfill? Now, you say that customers have a desire to save money and they have a desire for quality, price, and service. Those are expectations again. But a lot of people, and in fact almost everyone, has the desire that they may not be verbalizing to you. It may be hidden beneath the surface, or they may come right out and tell you. How do you speak to customers' desires? Well, if we go back to the original Kinko's, this is Paul Orfalea. He's the founder of Kinko's, now known as FedEx Office. How many people still call it Kinko's? I still call it Kinko's, even though it's been FedEx Office for years now. Well, Paul Orfalea, back in the 70s, he promised to small business owners that he was going to make you look more important. Remember, back in the 70s and even into the 80s, there was no desktop publishing. There was just a copier and a typewriter. In fact, I was a young sales rep in the 80s when a Kinko's opened up here in Waco, and I went there and they had one Mac. They had one Mac, and we did not have a computer in our office. I was an advertising salesperson in radio. And what I did is I went to this Kinko's and I typed up my proposal on the Mac and made it look fancy rather than typing it out on a typewriter, as most people did back then. And then I had it printed off and I had it bound. And I looked important. I looked more important than any other sales rep in town. And in fact, I had one client tell me they purchased from me. They purchased my order from me as soon as they saw I gave them a bound presentation. He told me later, he says, as soon as I saw your bound presentation, I knew I was going to buy from you. I just didn't want to tell you right then. And so he made me work for the order. But Kinko's, you see what they did? They made a promise to your desire to look more important, like you deserved the business. This is a former client of mine, Dr. Montgomery, a chiropractor in Belton, Texas, Dr. Larry Montgomery, and he said, I promise to conquer your pain. Now, there's a big trend in the chiropractic industry now to go into this holistic sort of medicine because it's additional profit centers for chiropractors. But the desire of Dr. Montgomery's customers was, I want to be pain-free. I don't want to have to walk around and limp around in pain. And so Dr. Montgomery said, I'm going to promise to conquer your pain. And he spoke to his customers' desires. So what's your promise? What desires are you speaking to your customer? That's what you have to do. You have to know your customer, know what is their desire. Is it to look more important? Is it to be pain-free? Is it to be more attractive? What is it? That is the first part of the branding equation if you want to build that relationship with customers. Now, the second part, after you've determined what your personality is to go to, after you determine what your product is, you go to your brand personality. This is what I believe your unique selling proposition when combined with your brand's promise. You've all heard of the USP, right? The unique selling proposition. That's what you have to come up with, you are told by many marketers, in order to be different. Well, the problem is, by definition, unique means only one. And there's very few selling propositions that you can come up with that are unique and only one. So you really, if you're going to base it on the USP, you're not going to have a unique business. But if you look at the world and say, what is there only one of in the world? What is really unique in the world? That thing is people. You are the only person like you in the entire world. There are no two people exactly alike. And the unique combination of your promise plus your personality is something that's really unique. And so you need a brand personality applied to your brand's promise. Now we're getting into something that's unique. Let's go back to George's, home of the Big O. What's their personality? It's the good old boy personality. You go to George's, home of the Big O, to have a good old beer drinking time, and you're there to be a good old boy. You hang out, drink beer with your friends, and just laugh and talk. If you go into George's, it's always loud. There's people always talking, just people having a good time there. It's where you go just to hang out, relax, and have a good old time with your friends. I know I'm saying good old a lot, but we're in Texas, okay? So give us a break there. So what kind of personality can you have for your business? It's a little bit tough for you to look at your own personality, but here are some that you can apply to your business. These are personality traits. People initially, when we talk about brand personalities, the entrepreneur, the business owner says, well, I'm honest, I'm trustworthy. Again, those are top-level expected personality traits. What you have to do is choose that second-level personality trait, the one that really applies specifically to you. So we've got a couple of challenges here when we apply a personality to a brand, a personality to a brand. And one is that it's hard to understand what our own personality is. And the second thing is we have multiple personality traits and we have situational personality traits. But a business cannot have multiple personality traits because we need to be consistent and we need to meet the customer's expectations every time they come in. So if you have a gregarious personality on your business and then they come in one time and you're all dour, your employees are dour and stern and everything like that, well, you can't do that. Or intense is another one of the personality traits up there. So what you have to do is you have to choose a dominant personality trait for your business, and you have to stick with it. And you have to choose one, you as the business owner, as the entrepreneur, has to choose one that flows naturally from you. It's one of your natural personality traits. But we are, unfortunately, uniquely unqualified to determine what our own dominant personality traits. We did this exercise in a in a live workshop here locally. I did this Branding 101 presentation. And one entrepreneur there who owns her own business, she knew someone else who was at the workshop, and she called, and this person who was her client called the entrepreneur soft and caring. And this shocked and surprised the entrepreneur who we were doing kind of like the case study on. And she says, I didn't think that. Because what we think about ourselves are often not what other people think about us. So my technique, my tactic for coming up with your dominant personality trait for your business is to ask someone about you. Because if you go up to someone and say, hey, Tell me about me. What's my personality trait? What are they going to do? Well, they're going to be nice to you. Well, you're very honest, Jay, and you're always dependable, and you're very smart and stuff like that. So you can't get an honest answer. So what you need to do is ask your spouse, a very good friend, to go to someone else who knows you and say, hey, what do you think about Jay? What kind of personality does he have? And then ask someone and come up with a list of personality traits. And do this to a few people. Don't just do it to one person, but do it to a few people. And then come up with your dominant personality trait that you will apply and combine with your brand's promise. So what's your personality? Your brand needs a promise and a personality for you to begin to have a relationship with customers. So keep your questions, and you are free at the end of this webinar to shoot me your questions, and we will answer them at the end of this webinar. Also, my email address, if you have someone you want to ask these offline or they come back to you later, email me, Jay, that's J-A-Y, at themarketingspot.com, Jay at themarketingspot.com. Okay, so we've covered your brand's promise, your brand's personality. What's next? I promised you 4 things. Well, the 4th thing is the tagline. The tagline may be your best brand communication tool. That's what my friend Tagline Jim Morris says. That's his website, taglinejim.com. But he calls it your best brand communication tool, and I agree with him because we live in a cluttered brand world out there, always fighting for attention. And sometimes we only have seconds, literally seconds or an instant, to get into the customer's mind and have them pay attention to us, and so that we can tell our story. So my friend Tagline Jim, he has a term he calls the differescence, the thing that makes you different, the essence of you that makes you different. And he's coined that term, and it's the thing that is really you, the essence of your difference. It's a combination of your brand's promise plus your brand's personality. And that has to show through in your tagline. There's my friend Tagline Jim Morris, who says the tagline is the single most powerful, condensed, compact of expression of your brand. And so it has to say something. Your tagline has to communicate something about your brand, its promise, and its personality. The U.S. Marine Corps is one of my favorite brands, maybe because I'm a military brat. My dad was in the Army, and so I got a place in my heart for the military. But do you know the tagline for the Marines? They come and go with it sometimes, but it sticks with you, doesn't it? It's the few, the proud. Okay, and those 4 words, they give you this personality and the promise of the Marines, right? Proud patriots, an exclusive club serving their country. We're few, we're proud, and we get the job done. You get that from the brand, from the Marines brand and the tagline, right? That's the power of a tagline. So I'm going to contrast that with another tagline. This is the Crack Team, foundation repair company based in suburban or in metropolitan St. Louis. And the Crack Team, they decided to step up their branding efforts, and they formed this little guy here, Mr. Happy Crack, to be their spokesman and kind of the representative icon of their business. And you see that Mr. Happy Crack has a mouth there, so of course he has to say something, and what he's going to say is the tagline. And that tagline is, a dry crack is a happy crack. So can you get the personality of the Crack Team there from that logo, from that tagline? They do foundation repair, and they do it kind of in an irreverent, fun way. A dry crack is a happy crack. After they implemented this branding and this tagline, and I don't have the figures here in front of me, but their business in the next year went up substantially. And so this tagline says all sorts of things to me, like, oh, are cracks not supposed to be red? So it makes me think, wow, I need a dry crack, or my cracks, so it implies some sort of thing about their process and what they do with cracks, and they do it in a irreverent sort of way. It makes me at least want to check them out. Not everybody, but for a lot of people, it did. So what about some other famous taglines? Who said this one? We'll leave the light on for you. You can almost hear Tom Bodette's voice, right? It's Motel 6. which this tagline came about almost totally by accident. In fact, I believe Tom Bodett said it himself while he was cutting a radio commercial. He was just messing around and said, "We'll leave the light on for you." And it stuck. A clean, comfortable room at an affordable price. We'll leave the light on for you at Motel 6. Okay, so it's kind of a friendly, homespun type personality, not promising much, but we're going to promise you a clean, comfortable room where you can stay when you're tired and you're on the road. So it's personality plus a promise. Another one of my favorites, they don't use it anymore, but think outside the bun, is from Taco Bell. So this is a good tagline, I believe, is because it's sticky. It kind of breaks your guessing machine, because everybody says think outside the box. Everybody says that. But not everybody says think outside the bun. Taco Bell does, and it worked very well for them. So think outside the bun is a very good illustration of the tagline. Let's call it a tagline formula, or what makes a good tagline. It's a brand's promise plus the personality, plus a third little element we're going to call stickiness. So the stickiness is an important thing, as we're going to see as we go through both taglines and logos. Because you have your brand's promise and you have your brand's personality, but it needs to be said or communicated in a sticky way, in a way that gets people's attention. Because our brains are so trained to ignore the common sights, sounds, and just old trite sayings, because we cannot possibly process all the sensory information that we come in contact with. So our brain just chooses to ignore most of it, except things that break a pattern or are a little bit sticky, which is a term I got from reading Made to Stick by the Heath brothers. So the ingredients of a tagline are, first of all, it needs to be about one thing. Okay, not quality, price, or service. That one thing is, of course, your promise combined with your personality said in a sticky way. So the one thing is your brand's promise. For Corel, it was style. For the Marines, it was about being a proud patriot. For Motel 6, it's just a clean, comfortable room. That's what we're promising you. So so the stickiness is breaking people's guessing machines. And how do you do that? Well, let me give you some tagline essentials. And you're going to see right away one of the tools that you will need to create your tagline. The first thing you're going to need is, of course, the brand promise. That's the one thing you want to communicate in your tagline. Get people the essence of your business. The differ part of the differ essence is your brand's personality. When you add your personality to your specific promise, then you can begin to see the makings of a different tagline. Now there are some other things that you're going to need. You're going to need some synonyms, and that's why the thesaurus is there. And use the paper kind. You can use the one online, but it's just not as detailed and it's not as sensory as a regular thesaurus. If you dive into a paper thesaurus, you'll see there are references to other related terms and different ways that you can look up things. So I encourage you to get a thesaurus. I got mine at Barnes & Noble one day. It was on sale. It was like $5, and I picked it up, and so I use that thing all the time. So what you're looking for is synonyms. And the reason you are looking for synonyms is because, remember, we want to break people's guessing machines and come up with something that's sticky. Now, we use a common vernacular, and we probably use the same terms, the same vocabulary terms, repeatedly over and over again. What the thesaurus does is it gives you synonyms for the words that you use all the time, words that you might not have thought of. So what you'll do is you'll go through the thesaurus for your term, and I'll tell you what terms you're going to use in a minute, and you're going to read through a list of the synonyms, and what you're going to do is write down the words that kind of pop out at you. They sound a little bit different, but mean the same thing, and we're going to use those later on. Another thing that you're going to need are metaphors. Metaphors give extra meaning to what you're doing. So you may use the metaphor. For example, I had a client one time who was a real estate investment company, and we applied the metaphor of a sports team to his business. In fact, we branded his look and his tagline and the way he does business around that of a sports team. And so when you apply a metaphor to your business, such as a sports team, you begin to conjure up some other visualizations and other words and other more synonyms for your business. And you get words that you might not have normally thought of or used for your business had you not applied the metaphor. And the third thing you need is an open mind, because you want to say something that's different about your business. And you need to open up your mind to some new possibilities, to these metaphors, to these synonyms. And then once you assemble all these essentials, you're going to begin the tagline creation process. So I'm going to give you the process just briefly here so that you'll know what to do. Now remember, this is Branding 101, so we can't go through each one specifically, but I'm going to have a little invitation for you at the end of this webinar that you can take advantage of, and I can maybe help you through some of these things. So the first thing is exploring. What you're going to do is you're going to explore the synonyms, the metaphors. You're going to go through your brand's promise, your brand's personality, your brand's values, your mission, your vision, and you're going to pick out keywords. And you're going to write down all the keywords, the words that mean something about your business. For the Marines, it was something that's proud. For Corel, it was style. Those are a bunch of the different keywords that you might come up with during the exploring process, words that mean things for your business. And then you're going to start coloring. You're going to get out the thesaurus. You're going to look at synonyms. You're going to apply metaphors to your business, and you're going to start writing all these words down. The metaphors, the synonyms, different terms that you can now apply to your business. The third step is to borrow. For example, Taco Bell borrowed think outside the box, and they turned it into think outside the bun. So what you want to do is you want to look at some of your favorite taglines. Hey, borrow them, look at them, see how they're constructed, write them down. What are some common industry terms from within your industry? Write those down, some sayings that you like, and then borrow them and start inserting keywords. And this is where we start sculpting, inserting some of those keywords that you wrote down, your synonyms, your metaphors. So just start playing around with the words, moving them around. Think outside the box, think outside the bun. We'll leave the light on for you. You see how these things start forming? And that's what you need to do to sculpt your tagline. I've got more resources on my website about how to create a tagline that goes in depth on my blog. And just search taglines on the Marketing Spot, and you will find some more. And also email me, and I can direct those links to you too. Okay, so that's the process for creating a tagline. So there are lots of bad taglines out there, and you should know, hey, what makes a bad tagline? And the first thing is, and these are from my friend Tagline Jim Morris again. Tagline Jim, by the way, check out his website. Excellent as far as taglines and diving into them and dissecting them and looking at good and bad ones. But what makes a bad one? Well, the first thing is bragging, making it all about you. We're #1 in customer service, the largest delivery company in the metropolitan area. Voted #1 time and time again by our fans. It's not about you. It's about your promise. What do you promise people? That's what should be in your tagline. Then I was going with tagline fads. You know, I remember when Survivor first started and everybody was outsmart, outwit, whatever their thing was, and they were trying to do takeoffs of that. Don't use tagline fads. Those come and go. You are a durable business and a durable brand. Now, that's not to say that someday you might want to change your tagline, because you can't. You know, things evolve, things change, and maybe 4 or 5 years down the road, you'll need to change your tagline. But when you create your tagline, it should be with the intention of it being durable and long-lasting in terms of years, not months. And then finally, avoid one-word taglines such as rising, upward, things like that. Those are very popular, especially with big brands. So that's element number 3 of our Branding 101 brand construction. What's your tagline? So now we're going to get to the final element here, which is everybody's favorite, what everybody wants to talk to, and they want to get to first, but it's what you should do finally in your branding process, and that is the beloved logo. Now, your logo is not your brand. I know you know that. It's not your brand, but oftentimes you'll hear marketers say, hey, we need to do some branding. Let's get a logo done. The logo is the visual representation of your brand. It's a visual identity hook on which customers hang all the attributes of your brand, your promise, your personality, the experience they have with you, the word of mouth they hear about you. When they see your logo, it should remind them of that. And that's what a logo does. So that's the angle that we're going to come at it from. It completes your logo. It completes your brand. It doesn't make your brand. That doesn't mean you get any other logo. You need to get one that does represent your brand. So let's look at the purpose of a logo: to help get your brand into the mind of the consumer, to leave a memorable visual impression, and then to connect all those brand attributes with something that's physical, your logo. If you were to drive down like the popular business street of your town, you would see, if you concentrate, all these signs with all these logos on them, right? But most of the time you don't notice them. You don't see them at all because you're just driving down the street. And so that's where we have to consider things about getting into the mind of the consumer. We have to look at how vision works to construct our own logo. So let's look at our vision and how does that work. Vision takes up an enormous amount of our brain power. In fact, vision consumes 50% of the resources in our brain, just taking in all that visual sensory information. It's very, very powerful, and it's very, very resource consuming. And so our brain, this is why our brain says, whew, let's not take in everything, because if we did, we'd overload our brain. We just simply cannot handle all the audio, video, visual, sensory information. And another thing you should know about the way our vision works is that we see things in pictures. Not in video, but we see things in pictures. Our mind takes a bunch of pictures. In fact, when your brain, when your mind is seeing this word right now, brand, what it really is doing is seeing 5 little word pictures, letter pictures, I mean, that together combine to have the meaning brand. So each of those letters is a little picture to your brain, and it combines that little B, which has the B sound, and it makes this, and your brain is processing all that and combines it with all the other little letter pictures and forms the word brand. And that's how your vision works. And it works in a sequence. So when you say, all right, that's how vision works, how do we get into it? We have to pay attention to the sequence now. Okay, how we want to get into the mind of the consumer. And there is a brand discovery sequence, which our logo assists in. So we need to first get your potential customer's attention so that they will ask, what is that? Meaning you, your brand, your business. And then they will want to know, why should I care? Keep that simple little sequence in your mind. Get people's attention so they ask, what is that? And then, why should I care? The attention thing comes first. You have to get people's attention. And let's look at that. 1, 2, 3 little duckies. Oh, what's that? It's a ballerina. It was something that's unexpected. You didn't expect that. You saw those little pictures of the little duckies. Oh, they're cute little duckies. And then all of a sudden that's a ballerina, and you paid more attention because it was something unexpected. That is one way to get people's attention, is to do something that's unexpected. That's how to get people's attention in their brain. When you're trying to get them to notice your brain, you have to do something that's a little unexpected. Another way to get people's attention is with contrast. To put something that looks a little bit out of place. It may be similar, but it's a little bit out of place. So unexpectedness and contrast are the first part of that formula of unexpectedness, of getting people's attention. Unexpectedness and contrast get people's attention. So how does that work with the logo then? Well, let's take a look at some logos. There's the Audi logo. Favorite brand of mine. Starbucks, that's kind of weird. Dos Equis. Whataburger. Schmuckers. So those are some of just some logos to take a look at. So what makes them kind of unexpected? What allows them to get our attention? Because if you saw each one of those logos by itself, now Audi, you know, is a car. Starbucks, that's a sea siren, by the way, of the Starbucks logo. I did this in our workshop. We talked about Starbucks briefly, the live workshop that I did. And do you know how Starbucks got that logo with the sea siren? It goes back to their name. Remember, they were founded in Seattle. They originated in Seattle. And the original owners liked the book Moby Dick, and Starbuck was the name of the first mate in Moby Dick, and that is how Starbucks got their name. And that's why there's a sea siren in the logo. But Smuckers, we know what that is, jams and jellies. Dos Equis, it says Cerveza on there, but if we saw that, we'd know that that's a beer. Audi, we know is a car. So the logos don't necessarily have to be literal. That's one way to be unexpected and to contrast yourself from the other logos around, is to don't be so literal all the time. So let's talk about what are the ways to get your logo right so that it will be representative of your brand. So here are several logos that I've helped businesses get in the past. And what you're going to see is some common elements. The very first thing you should pay attention to is the font. Okay, and then the second thing I'm going to show you is the icon. Some iconography to your website. So font and icons are very important to your logo. And let's start with the font. Remember that I said that your brain sees words as little individual letter pictures. So if we want to be unexpected and we want to break people's guessing machines and contrast ourselves, let's start with the font. There's Dell's logo. Dell's a brand on the way down right now, but let's look at how they formed their logo. There's a couple things with the font that you should know about your logo. One is, don't use a font that's commonly available everywhere. You need to use a font that's different. Remember, our mind ignores things that it sees all the time. So what you need to do is choose a font that's different and then stylize that font in a way that the brain is not expecting. In this one, Dell kind of turned it on its side there, canted the E. So use a font that's not widely available, which Google broke, but they're Google. But they did try and stylize it differently by putting a different color on each letter of the logo. Google's changed up their logo a little bit now, but they at least tried, right? So here is a logo we did for a local automotive parts store. Just a local family who owns it. They also own a car dealership here. They opened up a car dealership. And so we went about the logo creation, and you'll notice some of the elements that I was talking about. First of all, the font. The font is different. It's not a font that's commonly available. By the way, my simple rule for this is open up Word. If you can find the font in Microsoft Word, don't use that font. Okay, use something different. I'll show you a resource here in a little bit. But so we used a different font, and then we stylized the font by dropping that R down, by opening up the R a little bit, and by making the letters a little bit thicker. And then we added some iconography and styled the font at the same time by adding that little race flag to dot the I. So the font's name is called Infinite Justice, which you will not find on Microsoft Word. I hope not, at least. And we purchased it at myfonts.com. There are many font foundries out there. This is the one that I happen to use. Others, there are others out there, so you can just Google or search for fonts. I would suggest you pay for them. They're not that much. I think we paid $30, $40 for our font. So if you go to those free font foundries, a lot of them will be used other places. They'll be more common. So this is a place to get a unique font that won't be widely available everywhere, and that will be different for your business. So this is how we took Infinite Justice and we stylized it, added a little bit of iconography, and formed the logo for Rodina Auto Parts. Now, we could have done that, right? That's a typical font right there, Rodina Auto Parts. It's how it might look if we would have done it like a normal way, or we could have used that font, or we could have used that font. But we used this right here. Do you see the difference? Looks a lot different, doesn't it? So that's how you kind of get into the people's mind with unexpectedness and contrast, and it starts with your font. And then, of course, I mentioned iconography, which we did a little bit with Rodina, not as much as some of these other logos. Do you see that? So I've taken away the icons here. There they are, and now they're gone. Do you see how it adds to the logo when you have an icon that goes with your logo? So let's talk a little bit about the icon and what you can do with it. One of the keys is it should represent your business, but it does not have to be necessarily literal. For example, you might look at a lot of these icons, and in fact, I think you would look at all of them, and you wouldn't know what the business was. And I think that's a good thing, because if you have like a house for a realtor's logo, then what you have is something that people expect. And remember, our brains ignore what it expects. So you have to break people's guessing machines with contrast and with unexpectedness. So you can see these logos. The one in the upper left-hand corner is for a leadership coach. The one in the upper right-hand corner with the S and the blue heron is for an investment real estate company. The bat is for a web development company. The flame is for a that was for a pickup accessories business, pickup truck accessories business. The little castle there is for a line of ATV and UTV accessories called the Fortress. And the little heartbeat there was for a computer networking company. So you can see the icon is not necessarily literal. It can mean anything you want. Take this logo, for example. Do you know what those little three parts of the logo mean? Well, they mean values, theoretical learning, and experiential learning. That's the Baylor Business School logo, and I attended Baylor University in the business school there. But people aren't going to know that, right? If you want to do it for your reasons and do those things for your reasons, that's fine. When I see that icon, I know it belongs to the Baylor Business School. I don't have to know that it means theoretical learning, experiential learning, and values. So you don't have to get too deep into that. What you have to do is have a logo that represents your brand and represents it well. Let's talk briefly about colors, because colors have meaning. There's a psychological implication for the color that you choose for your logo. I choose red. I choose a deeper red that has some brown in it because I want to give the connotation of power and authority within my business. So I use red and black. But others are orange, blue, green. Those are all popular colors within logos. And so you can consult. There are some websites online where you can go the meaning of color. If you email me, I'll email you my resources for those. But Alina Wheeler, who's written a very popular book called Designing Brand Identity, she says colors used to evoke emotion, express personality, and stimulate brand association. So that brand personality you chose for your business and the emotions that you want to evoke should go into consideration when you're creating your logo. And it should also go into consideration based on who your customer is, who is your common customer, because ultimately you want to own that color and its meaning for your business. For example, the Susan G. Komen Foundation, Susan G. Komen for the Cure, they kind of own pink, right? They've actually changed the way we think about pink, and you'll notice the pink they use is kind of a little deeper hue of pink, not a bright pink. So they own pink. Starbucks, green. It's their dominant color, right? Coca-Cola is red. So you want to be consistent and you want to try to own a color. So once you pick a color, see if you can weave that color throughout the design scheme of your business. But choose a color that means something for your logo. Okay, so those are the four elements of the brand. In choosing those and putting those together, you are actually building the foundation of a relationship that you're going to have with a customer, because you're building it on the meaning of your business. Now, what I like to do is at the end of these webinars, and I realize we're running out of time, and I want to go over a few things, and I want to answer any questions that you might have. So you should ask yourself, what's next? What are you going to do with all this information from the webinar? Well, the first thing I would advise you to do is go through it piece by piece again. I'm going to email you the video recording of this webinar, and you can watch it in pieces. Go through each thing by itself. And then I'm going to make an offer to you here shortly so that you can do it, and I can work with you through it. But what's next is I like to, whenever I read a book or go to a webinar, at the end I like to sit down and say, okay, what 3 things can I take away from this? And what are throughout my 3 action steps that I can take? So I'm going to give you some suggestions. You can write your own. But the first thing is, hey, let's clarify my brand promise. And what are the desires of my customers? So let me first identify the true hidden desires of my customers, and then craft a brand promise that speaks to those desires. What's my dominant brand personality? So make your little list, I would encourage you, of 3 things that you want to do and 3 things that maybe you want to do in the next week that will move you closer to what you want to do. And of course, one of the next things you can do is go to my website, themarketingspot.com/events, and look at some other opportunities for more webinars so that you can continue to build your marketing plan. This is my series of summer marketing events, what I call my summer marketing series. You can find it on my website at events. And then I'd like to invite you to go on a pilot program with me, a branding journey. So what I'll do is I will email you the opportunity to participate, and this is going to be free of charge. I'm not going to charge you anything because this is a pilot program, and this is Branding 101, and I'm going to test a few things out for you, so you're going to have to go with me as I work through the bugs, but the part of it is you're going to get it for free. And so what we will do is I will begin this next week. I will email you the invitation to participate in this pilot program. And what we will do is we will work through these 4 branding steps together as a group and get the foundation of your brand put together. So each week you will get a weekly detailed tutorial with worksheets that go along with that tutorial. That tutorial may be in the form of a video. It may be an audio program. It may be an article, an ebook that I send you. I'm not exactly all sure yet, but you're going to get something every week beginning next week. And then once you work through the tutorial and the worksheets, you can email me your questions, and I will take everybody's questions and do an audio program and send it out so that you can listen to it, and you can be there live if you want when I do the telecall. And we will work through these things for you step by step. We will build your brand's promise, identify your brand's personality, craft your tagline, and if you need one, I'll show you how to get a logo to do that. Now, I don't want to misrepresent things here. You will not be working with me one-on-one. This is a pilot program. If you do wish to hire me as your consultant, just email me and we'll talk about that. But this is a free pilot program because you participated in this webinar, and you're going to help me build some things for my business too. And hopefully we will help you build a brand that means something. So you'll get an email from me. If you are watching a recording of this video from some other source, go ahead and give me an email and let me know if you want to talk or if you have questions about the pilot program. So there's my contact information, and you can email me, call me, look me up on Facebook, or go to my blog. So that is the meaty portion of our webinar. We've got a few minutes here that I will answer some questions. So you can use the question box of the webinar. Let me freeze the screen here while I go back and look and see what questions we might have. And you can use that little question box to ask any questions that you might have. And alrighty, so let's see here. So the tagline, someone has a question on the tagline. How long are they? What should they be? The first rule is there are no rules. As my friend Tagline Jim Morris would say, the first rule is there are no rules. But generally, you want to stay away from 1 or 2 word taglines, and you should probably try not to go more than 7. But remember, there are no rules, there are guidelines. So if you can come up with something that is sticky, that communicates your brand's promise, and does it with personality in more than 7 words, then go ahead and use it. Another caution I would give you about taglines is asking people whether or not they like it. Okay, remember the purpose of a tagline. It's brand communication device. It's not a popularity poll, okay? So don't go around, and this goes for your logo too, don't go around asking people, hey, do you like my logo? Do you like my tagline? Because they will tell you whether or not they like it, or if they don't like it, they will tell you some element that might not need to be changed. So go for what communicates in your tagline, what communicates your brand. Not everybody's going to like it, but it may communicate your brand. And that's what you're looking for. If you, my rule of thumb always goes like this. If you find something that pleases everybody, what you really have is something that doesn't offend anybody. And it may not be the best thing for you. And besides, you're not trying to please everybody. Don't try to please everybody. In fact, another rule of thumb I have is if I can't find somebody who doesn't like it, then I probably don't have a very good idea or a very good tagline or a very good logo. So when I get feedback, it's for the purpose of, does it do what I want it to do, not do people like it. And if I can't find one person who doesn't like it, I'm thinking, I got to go back to the drawing board, because not one, all I have is something that doesn't offend anybody. What color should I use for my business? Again, I'm going to refer you to some resources. If you email me, I'll send you some links. And if you go through the pilot program, I'll have those resources for you. Colors have different meanings to different people too. Remember that. So look at your dominant customer type. For example, pink in a logo affects men and women differently, the way we look at pink. So look at your dominant personality or your dominant customer type and choose a color that's best for them. And 2 things, remember, communicating your brand's personality and the emotion you want to evoke from your customer. Brand promises. Do you have to tell customers what your brand promise is? No, you do not have to tell people what your brand promise is overtly if you don't want to. But what you should do is they should get the meaning of your brand's promise. Corel promises, from what I can tell, style. Okay, they don't have to say, we promise you style. But you should get that from the tagline, from the business. So you don't have to overtly say it. For example, Kinko's, if we go back to the Kinko's example, they wanted to make us look important. They don't have to tell you that. You know that. But when they communicate with you, FedEx office now, I'm sorry, I'm still saying Kinko's. 20 years later, I'm still saying Kinko's. So you do not have to overtly say your personality, your promise. Let's see if we can go through here. Let's see if we have one final question. What is stickiness? Stickiness is very important in a business. It helps you stand out from everybody else in the crowd, what you're saying, what you're doing, how you look like. And so remember those 2 things, unexpectedness and contrast. If it's what people would expect from you, then try something different. You have to break people's guessing machines, and you have to make them take notice. You have to get their attention, and that's where stickiness comes in. I would recommend that book, Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. Very good. It's a must read. I think it's one of my recommended reads. It's something you should have. Okay, if you have any more questions, please email them to me, Jay, that's J-A-Y, at themarketingspot.com. And I'd be happy to answer your questions in a future program. I invite you to take part of the pilot program. You can email me and tell me you want to do that too. I'll email everyone who's registered for this webinar, so you will get that invitation. But if you're watching the video, just email me at that address right there. Of course, call me, or anything else you want to do, however you want to contact me. And go for it. People are going to, or maybe discourage you from this branding thing because it sounds a little off. What's my brand promise? What's my brand's personality? I hope after going through this exercise, though, you say that, hey, that makes sense. Now I kind of know. And when I did this live workshop last week with some local entrepreneurs, that's the feeling that I got. Okay, that makes sense. Now I understand. Now I understand why I've been struggling so much with building some differentiation for my business. If you go through these steps, the promise, the tagline, the personality, the logo, and some other things that come later with deeper into branding, you begin to see how you can form a relationship with a customer. And that's what you want, right? A relationship. You don't want a transaction. You want a relationship. So thank you for attending today. This has been Branding 101, 4 Steps to Building a Business that Attracts Customers. My name is Jay Arrett. I'm Dean of Marketing Know-How at themarketingspot.com.